Minister, Professor King, Chief Executive, Omnican, Chief Executive, Malaysia Institute of Directors, ladies and gentlemen. May I also start by thanking the Institute of Directors as well as Omnican for partnering with Focal Point in hosting this event, and also for your presence. I think it's a remarkable turnout, more than what we really expected. I think the previous speakers have really given the context to why GRI exists and the need for sustainability reporting. There's no need to really lay back on those points, except to emphasize that business is no longer our short-term interest, understood in terms of sales, profits, and dividends, but accountability for long-term value creation to internal and external stakeholders. This is pretty much why GRI is set up, to help organizations make that change, make that transition to a sustainable global economy in which they are accountable for their social, environmental, economic performance as well as governance. GRI is what I can call a global sustainability democracy that brings together various expertise and experience from different constituent groups, mainly business, labor, civil society organizations, and what we call academia and consultants, which is a group in which we call media institutions within the founding documents of GRI. In terms of the setup, we pretty much a network organization. The main office is based in Amsterdam, as Professor King mentioned earlier, moved from the US and was pretty much set up in Amsterdam. We now have about 6 regional offices, the South African office being the latest addition in that family. Other offices are in Brazil, Australia, China, India, and the United States. Also, one of the key governance features of GRI is we have 3 governance bodies. We have the board of directors, of which Professor King was chair until 2 years ago. And then we also have the stakeholder council, which pretty much plays an advisory role to the board of directors as well as the secretary. And we are also honored today to have the presence of Ms. Karen Ayton, who is the current chair of the stakeholder council. So we really have quite a wealth of experience and expertise in the room. 2 people who have contributed immensely to the development of GRI as well as the development of sustainability reporting guidance. Thank you, Professor King, and thank you, Karen. We also have a governmental advisor group recognizing the importance that public policy can play in ensuring sustainability performance and also in driving uptake of sustainability performance. We have a governmental advisor group. There are 15 governments that are currently represented in that advisor group, and South Africa is the only representative from the South African continent. Added to our family, we also have certified training partners who are licensed to offer training courses on the guidelines. We currently have 2 certified training partners on the continent and 35 around the world. And we also have data partners that really help us monitor the reporting trends around the world. And with regards to certified training partners, I can also mention that we have received the request from the Institute of Directors to have presence in Mauritius, if we can have local capacity that can help companies with regards to sustainability as well as sustainability reporting. So we really considering the request, and we'll be reverting back to you shortly with the decision in that regard. We also have strategic alliances with those organizations that are listed there, Organization of Economic Community, OECD. We also have a relationship with the UN Global Compact, the United Nations Environment Program, and the ISO, the International Standardization Organization. In terms of the focal point, I think it has been well introduced by Jane with regard to the objectives for setting the focal point. It is pretty much the realization that on the continent we have quite advanced reporting in South Africa. 97% of the reports that GRI receives or is recorded on its database from Africa. 97% of those they come from South Africa, and the 3%, the remaining 3%, we have a couple or one report or a couple reports from each of Mauritius. I think we have Omnicare, Kenya, Nigeria, as well as Egypt. So, with setting up the focal point, we're really pretty much looking at how do we take the lessons from South Africa across the continent, across the borders. And we are quite pleased in this regard with the relationship between the Mauritius Institute of Directors as well as the Institute of Directors of Southern Africa, looking at how to drive sustainability uptake in Mauritius, and also following up the examples of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange by also setting up the sustainability index within the Stock Exchange of Mauritius. So, as a focal point, we've also pretty much focusing on a few countries. There is demand across sub-Saharan Africa, but we're quite limited in terms of resources and also quite limited in terms of capacity. So we really have to focus, and we have prioritized 5 countries for our outreach and engagement: South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Mauritius, as well as the Southern African region, where we have not active engagement, but respond to invitations or picking opportunities and so forth. And then what GRI is all about, like I said, GRI pretty much supports the change by organizations towards the sustainable global economy. We pretty much develop guidelines that help companies manage their environmental, social, and economic performance, as well as the governance of their organization. So our main product are the reporting guidelines, which are pretty much a tool that helps companies manage their significant risks in these categories, and also help companies enhance opportunities that are also in these categories. So we pretty much about promoting change towards the sustainable global economy. We pretty much help companies manage the significant impacts and risks as well as opportunities. And then sustainability is about strategy. It is about a strategic and purposeful exercise. It is not about ticking the box. We have the guidelines, and the practice that we have observed with some companies is they look at the reporting guidelines or categories and aspects, and they try to respond to each of those aspects or each category, putting together information that is available, and that information in most cases has not been very strategic or helpful to the organization or to the stakeholders for the company. So what we are emphasizing more, especially with the G4 guidelines, is that sustainability reporting should be strategic. It should be of value to the organization. It should be of value to your stakeholders. It is not just about ticking the boxes. And there is a misconception that I also picked up in some countries where companies will be telling us that they report to GRI. I think we don't report to GRI. Sustainability reporting is about the relationship between your organization as well as your internal and external stakeholders. You don't report to us. What we do, we develop the framework that enables you manage that relationship, that enables you manage the impact and risk in those relationships and value creation. So pretty much sustainability, it is about smart, inclusive, it is a vital step towards smart, inclusive development that balances long-term sustainability with environmental care as well as social justice. With regards to G4, I think I've raised 1 or 2 concerns that have been picked up with our previous version, especially concerns around greenwashing concerns that sustainability reporting has been of limited value to some organizations. So the Board of Directors of GRI, also responding to those concerns, looked at how best to revise and review the guidelines, and came up with 4 objectives or 5 objectives that they gave to the Secretariat in order to improve the guidelines. That the guidelines is to be user-friendly for both beginner and experienced reporters. That there has to be improvement with regards to technical quality, and they also had to be more emphasis and more focus on materiality, and they also needed to be closer alignment between the GRI reporting guidelines and other accountability frameworks that have been developed over the last year. And more importantly, also G4 was also supposed to provide clear guidance on how to link sustainability and integrated reporting. The development of GRI guidelines, the G4 as well as the other guidelines, is undertaken through a strict due process that is overseen by the Board of Directors as well as the Stakeholder Council. In the G4 development, it took over 2.5 years of consultations, working group input. Content and input is derived pretty much from working groups that are balanced in terms of stakeholder representation. They are also balanced in terms of geographical representation as well as gender. So the global input and diversity, I think arguably it gives GRI and the guidelines broader legitimacy as well as relevance to different contexts and environments. The guidelines, the G4 guidelines come in 2 parts. We have the first part, which pretty much outlines what you have to report on, which is the reporting principles and standard disclosures, which is about 95 pages, providing the principles and the general and specific disclosures that an organization should consider reporting on. And accompanying that is a much thicker volume, the implementation manual. And the implementation manual gives more detailed guidance on how to apply the reporting principles and standard disclosures, as well as the definitions, linkages to other frameworks. In that regard, how organizations can go about collecting the information that they have to report on. Underpinning the reporting framework, we have 2 sets of principles. One set of principles that help you define the content of what you report on, and key in these principles are materiality as well as stakeholder inclusiveness. Organizations are encouraged to also identify the material topics in consultation with their stakeholders. And in the guidelines, we are also pretty much concerned or encouraging organizations to report on their stakeholder engagement processes, the issues that the stakeholders will have raised, and how the organization will have responded to the issues raised. And the other set of principles, they help organizations improve on the quality of what they report on. So we have the set of principles helping you define the content of what you report on, and the other set of principles helping you improve on the quality of the information that you're pretty much reporting on. And we have in the guidelines, the reporting principles and standard disclosures. We have the general standard disclosures that each organization has to report on, and these are your strategy and analysis as they relate to sustainability and your business strategy, the organizational profile, the identified material aspects both within the organization as well as in your relationship that is external to the organization. Like I mentioned earlier on, also stakeholder engagement, what are the issues that your stakeholders are raising and how you have responded to those issues and concerns. And also governance, and in the G4, the governance disclosures have been expanded. They're now more comprehensive. providing more linkage between governance, strategy, as well as ethics and integrity to sustainability performance. And ethics and integrity is a new feature or a new category of disclosures in the G4 guidelines. And so the standard disclosures have to be reported on by all organizations that are reporting in accordance to the G4 guidelines. And the other set of disclosures is what we call specific standard disclosures. And these are based on materiality. You don't have to report on each every aspect under each of those categories, but you only report on those aspects that are material to your organization. So if one of the categories is not material to the organization, you may not report on it, but emphasis is on materiality. Report on those aspects and categories that are material to your organization. And for each material aspect or category, you also provide us or report on the management approach, how you are managing that aspect, why that aspect is material, what makes that aspect material, and your management approach, and also an evaluation or assessment of your management approach and any changes that you then effect on the management approach to make it effective. And in terms of what to report on, it's divided into three broad categories: economic, environment, and social. And the social is also subdivided into four subcategories of labor practices and decent work, human rights, society, and product responsibility. So we have categories and we have subcategories, and the topics which organizations should consider reporting on are categorized as aspects under each of these categories. It's quite a lot, as you can see from that slide. But what we encourage, especially with G4, is for organizations to focus on what matters, where it matters. It's more about, like I said earlier, what is the value to the organization, what is the value of sustainability reporting to your stakeholders. It is not just about ticking the box and trying to answer each and every of those aspects, but those aspects that are significant and of strategic value and importance to the organization as well as your stakeholders. So G4 pretty much builds on the principle of materiality that was first introduced in G3. But ask organizations to focus on what matters, where it matters, on the basis of dialogue with your stakeholders. Focusing mind not only on the important risks, but also on opportunities and value drivers within and outside the organization, as well as including your value chain. So G4 is about focus. It is about managing or identifying what is critical to be managed and changed, even if the organization is not yet ready to measure or that is to report on that. But it is identifying those aspects that are critical, that are significant, and those opportunities that are also significant to the organization. We are convinced that the emphasis on materiality will see us move away from reports that are not strategic, that are not of value to the organization and the stakeholders, towards reports that are more strategic, more focused, and also more credible and easier to navigate. The guidelines, they come in two criteria. I mean, the reporting is in two criteria. In the past, in the previous versions, we used to have application levels, but because of the challenges that we picked up with those application levels, it was A, B, C, which were pretty much understood in an academic sense. We have since replaced the application levels with what we call core and comprehensive in accordance with the criteria. They both focus on materiality. If you see what I've highlighted, the disclosures for both core and comprehensive with regard to materiality are the same. The core provides essential elements that an organization needs to report on, and the comprehensive builds on this on the core. The main difference you will find is with regard to governance. You have more disclosures that you have to report on under the comprehensive option. And also we have 2 additional indicators under ethics and the integrity for the comprehensive as opposed to the core. And then with regards to specific disclosure, for the core option, you provide the disclosure of management approach, how we are managing the material aspect. But with regard to the specific indicators, for each identified aspect, you may only report on one indicator. But whereas for the comprehensive, you have to report on all the indicators that are applicable to that material aspect. So that is one of the key differences between the core and the comprehensive. In previous versions, we had a decision tree that helped you in terms of define the scope of your reporting. It was more restricted to contractual relations for the organization and entities. So the scope for reporting was pretty much defined by control and influence in entities. But with regard to G4, that has since been reviewed, and the lack of material impact is the only thing that can exclude an entity from a company's boundary. So what this means is, in the past, organizations would choose not to report on impact that were experienced in entities where they did not have control or influence. But what we are saying with G4 is that control and influence is not the only determinant factor, but impact should be the overriding determinant. So wherever there is impact, it should be included in the scope of reporting. And that impact should not only be within the organization, but also external to the organization, along your value chain or along the supply chain. And I mentioned earlier on the disclosure of management approach. You tell us how you are managing a material aspect that you would have identified, and tell us why that material is important, what makes that aspect important, and to report the impact that makes this aspect material, and also report on how the organization manages the material aspect as well as the impact. But more critically, especially with regards to G4, is also reports on the mechanism that you have in place to evaluate the effectiveness of that management approach and the result of that evaluation of the management approach and what changes you would have then made to that management approach. And then I think one of the important factors with regards to or key features of G4 is the emphasis on supply chain, the emphasis on also not only looking internal to the organization, but also looking at and considering impact along the whole value chain. I think this will help also address one of the conceptual loopholes where we had seen the outsourcing of production, and often it was also accompanied by outsourcing of responsibility. I think we had the case area on of the disaster in Bangladesh that tested a factory. So what G4 is emphasizing is that organizations should also exert their influence within their sphere of influence, exert pressure, work with your suppliers, and also improve their sustainability performance, improving sustainability performance along the supply chain. The focus is not to be a barrier of trade or a barrier of entry for suppliers to do business with your organization. But pretty much it is about also building the capacity, building the sustainability performance of your suppliers so that it becomes a win-win situation between your organization as well as your suppliers. G4 is also emphasizing on the role that the high decision-making board in an organization should play with regards to sustainability. What we're saying with G4 is that it's not sufficient for the highest decision-making board to just delegate the sustainability reporting or to delegate the sustainability of the organization to management, but to also be actively engaged in the reporting process and to play an oversight on sustainability policies, programs, and performance. Some of the controversial features include ratios of remuneration between the highest paid in the organization as well as the lowest paid in the organization, pretty much to reduce the inequality gap within the organization, but also more importantly within the country. And one other key feature of the new G4 guideline is organizations to report on their values, principles, standards, and norms of behavior, such as your code of conduct, code of ethics, and also the mechanisms that you have for internal and external people to report on concerns regarding the organizational integrity, your ethical or unethical behavior, such as your helplines, advice lines, whistleblower mechanisms, and so forth. Other new and revised disclosures include new disclosures on anti-corruption, where organizations are expected, if it is material, to also identify the risks that are related to corruption and also report on those identified risks related to corruption and what the organization has done, that is actions that you have taken with regard to those identified corruption-related risks. And also what the organization is doing with regard to communicating as well as training employees on anti-corruption procedures and policies. And also, I think this has just been reviewed and improved in regard to the guidelines, but it was also in the previous guidelines. That is financial and in-kind contributions, political contributions, and also disclose who the recipients of that contribution are. And that's the content index, which is also one important feature of the G4 guideline, where you, on the first column, you are outlining all the disclosures that you have reported on, and then any reasons for omitting any information that you might have identified as material. Such omissions might be due to legal limitations, or it can be because the information is not yet available and the organization is not yet started collecting or has put in place a system to collect that information, or it can be constrained because of confidentiality agreements. So you record and transparently disclose any information that you may have omitted. And more importantly, GRI is also encouraging external assurance so that there is more confidence in the information that is reported on. And in relation to that, we have the last column where you actually, for each standard disclosure or specific disclosure, you tell us which of those disclosures have been externally assured. And then the reasons of omission mentioned. The index provides a transparent way of you telling us the information that you may have omitted and what are the reasons that resulted in you omitting that information. So if you've identified an aspect of material and there are other indicators that may not be applicable, or that are applicable but you have chosen not to report on those, so you need to be transparent and specify the reasons why that information is not reported on. I think earlier on, one of the objectives of the G4 was to have closer alignment between the global reporting guidelines as well as other accountability frameworks that are on the market. In G4, there's quite a number, or G4 provides linkages with other guidelines and frameworks, OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises, the UNGC principles, as well as the recently adopted UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Professor King touched on integrated reporting. At GRI, we pretty much convinced that our reporting guidelines, they provide a sound basis for reporting on sustainability performance, and they provide a sound basis, be it in integrated reporting, annual reports, or any other form of corporate reporting. We are saying any integration should also be an integration of sustainability performance, because we believe sustainability sustainability performance impact on value creation, and if organizations are to integrate information, financial and non-financial, we believe that the G4 guidelines are pretty much designed to provide guidance on how best to present sustainability performance in any corporate reporting format. And I must, in conclusion, say over the past decade or 10 to 13 years, we have seen an increase in the uptake of sustainability reporting. A decade or so ago, we only had a few dozen companies that were reporting, but that number has grown to about 4,500 worldwide that are registered on GRI database as well as database of other organizations. So we have about 4,500 companies or organizations worldwide that are reporting on their sustainability performance, which is something to celebrate. I think that we moved from a few dozen to about 4,500, but it also highlights the gap that we need to address, because the 4,500 is only about 10% of publicly listed companies worldwide that are required to produce their annual financial report. And if that number even pales into greater insignificance, if you look at the estimated 82,000 multinationals that are operating around the world. So as GRI, we pretty much encourage or also encourage policymakers to put in place smart regulation. The report will explain why, so that we can also have an uptake in sustainability reporting around the world. We are working with the European Union. They have recently adopted a proposal which will see all companies that are employing minimum of 500 employees being required to disclose their non-financial performance. So it's an initiative that as an organization we are actively supporting. And around the world, we've also seen the uptake of smart regulation, with the example of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which has really been leading in that respect. And now working with their counterparts in Brazil, India, and Hong Kong, they've also now formed the Sustainability Stock Exchange, the Stock Exchange Sustainability Initiative, which is pretty much looking at encouraging all listed companies to report on their sustainability performance, or explain why should they choose not to report. So that may just show the policy initiatives around the world. I think in India they've also adopted a policy which requires all state-owned companies to disclose their sustainability performance. And I think in France they also have similar regulation, and we've also seen that in Brazil. And at the UN level, GRI is working with a grouping that is called the Friends of Paragraph 47, who are pretty much looking at advocating sustainability reporting through the UN framework or UN system. And that group of Paragraph 47 consists of Brazil, Denmark, France, South Africa, Norway, and Colombia. It's Paragraph 47 of the Rio + 20 outcome document. So pretty much looking at encouraging sustainability reporting at national level through public policy initiatives. And with regard to the support that we can provide in your reporting journey, we have an introductory training workshop, and we also have a more in-depth certified training program that is offered by our certified training partners. It's a 2.5 day workshop, so 16 hours minimum. But the introductory workshop is free of charge. We're looking at between 4 to 6 hours, and that can be offered to a group, or it can also be offered internal to an organization. Similarly, the certified training partners, training program can also be offered in-house to any company or organization. And we also pretty much place emphasis on small to medium enterprises who constitute the bulk of suppliers along the supply chain of many organizations. And we have learning materials that are pretty much targeted at small to medium enterprises, most of which are freely downloadable from our website. But the pathway publications are available at a cost from our electronic shop. And we also have a knowledge share project, which pretty much is a platform for sharing and learning between the reporting organizations. And recently, we have also established a learning platform on the application of G4, which we are calling the G4 Pioneer Program. And soon we're also going to launch a web-based online tool for G4 reporters. We are calling it G4 Online. That's it. I'm ahead of time. So thank you. And if you have any questions, technical questions, or if you want more clarity on the guidelines, you can contact us at guidelines@globalreporting.org. And if you also have any general feedback with regard to sustainability reporting or the guidelines, you can contact us at feedback@globalreporting.org. Thank you.